There was a time when men were carved by struggle, when dawn wasn't greeted by notifications, but by hunger and the quiet decision to rise again. Today, we live in an age of comfort. Our hands are clean, our bodies are safe, but our spirits, they are starving. We've built machines to carry our burdens, and in doing so, we've forgotten how to bear them. We've built walls against pain, and in doing so, we've locked ourselves away from growth. This is the paradox of modern strength. We've conquered nature, but surrendered to weakness. We fear discomfort more than death itself. Ask yourself, when was the last time you chose to suffer? Not because you had to, but because something inside you whispered, you must. The ancients understood something we've forgotten. To the samurai, strength wasn't found in the sword. To the monk, it wasn't in silence. To the philosopher, it wasn't in logic. It was in endurance, the sacred ability to remain still while the storm howls within. They believed strength is not something we build, it is something we remember. It already lives within us, buried under years of comfort, distraction, and noise. Every struggle you endure, every temptation you resist, every battle you fight alone in the dark, isn't building strength, it's awakening it. But here's the truth most never face. Modern life will not forge you, it will soften you. It will make you efficient, intelligent, but fragile. So the question becomes, how do we return to the way of those who were unbreakable? How do we recover the discipline, the stillness, the presence that made warriors immortal in spirit? What if the answer isn't found in gyms, in books, or in endless motivation videos, but in a ritual? A 100-day transformation, designed not to make you stronger, but to reprogram your very soul. Because real strength isn't measured by what you can lift, but by what you can endure when everything else is falling apart.
They called it Ango in Zen, a season of awakening. For 100 days, monks vanished into the mountains, stripped of distraction, stripped of identity, to confront the only enemy that ever truly existed, themselves. In the silence of dawn, they'd meditate until their legs trembled, their minds would scream, their bodies would beg for rest. And that's where the transformation began, because when the noise dies, the truth speaks. Across the sea, the samurai followed their own covenant, Ninpo, a code not of killing, but of endurance. For 100 days they trained in rain, in hunger, in stillness. Each breath a blade sharpening the mind, each hardship a forge tempering the soul. They didn't seek strength to defeat others, they sought mastery to defeat fear itself. And even further west, in the mountains of Sparta, the young were torn from comfort to enter the agoge. For 100 days and nights, they learned the law of survival, not to conquer the weak, but to annihilate weakness within. Different lands, different tongues, but one secret, whispered through time like an echo between worlds. 100 days of relentless discipline can rewire the human spirit. This was not superstition. It was sacred psychology. The ancients understood what modern science is only beginning to rediscover. That identity is not fixed. The self is clay. And when shaped under pressure, it hardens into something divine. Epictetus, once a slave turned philosopher, said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And Musashi, the undefeated swordsman, lived by the same truth, that comfort corrupts clarity and pain purifies purpose. To them, suffering was not punishment, it was initiation. Every hardship a passage, every failure a fire, every day a death and a rebirth. That is what the 100-day ritual truly was, not a challenge of the body, but a reprogramming of the soul, a descent into chaos, to rise as something more than human, as something unbreakable. But then came civilization. Ease replaced effort, motivation replaced mastery, and we began to train for image, not immortality. Modern man builds muscles but not meaning. He chases aesthetics, not awakening. The ancients trained to remember who they were. We train to forget. And that's where the true question begins to burn. If 100 days could forge gods from men, what could it awaken in you?
It begins not with triumph, but with destruction. The moment you decide to commit to 100 days of discipline, something inside you dies, quietly, almost imperceptibly. The comfort you once worshipped turns against you. Your old self begins to decay. Why bother? This is the first phase, destruction, the tearing down of illusions. Every morning you rise when the body begs to sleep. Every repetition, every meditation, every cold shower becomes a small act of rebellion against your former self. And with each act, the false layers, laziness, fear, identity, begin to crumble. Modern psychology calls this cognitive dissonance. The mind fights change because change threatens survival. But if you persist through this friction, you enter the second phase, discipline. This is the realm of ritual, repetition without resistance. Here, action becomes sacred. Science tells us that habits begin to engrave themselves into the neural pathways after roughly 66 days. The ancient masters didn't have neuroscience, but they had observation. They knew that around the third moon, the body and mind begin to move as one. What was once effort becomes instinct. The sword becomes an extension of the hand. Meditation becomes the natural state of mind. Hunger becomes clarity. But discipline is not the end. It's only the bridge. Then comes the third phase, dissolution. This is where the self begins to vanish. The ego, once loud and full of demands, grows quiet. You stop asking, how much longer? Or, what's the reward? Instead, there is only the act itself. Breath, step, movement, silence. You are no longer doing the practice. The practice is doing you. In Buddhism, this is the threshold of no self. In Stoicism, it is apatheia, the mastery of emotion through presence. In neuroscience, it is neuroplastic surrender, the moment the brain accepts a new identity as its truth. And from this emptiness, this holy silence, comes rebirth, the fourth and final phase. What emerges after 100 days is not a better version of the old self. It is something entirely new, a consciousness refined through suffering, a will unbent by fear, a body that no longer serves the ego, but the soul. This is the true science of transformation, that every act of structure dissolves chaos, and every act of discipline births freedom. Modern man believes freedom means doing what he wants, but the ancients knew the opposite truth. Freedom begins when you master what you must. The 100-day ritual is not about building habits. It's about burning identity. It is death and resurrection, the alchemy of endurance, where the human becomes divine. Because in the end, discipline is not a cage. It is a key, one that opens the gate between who you were and who you are destined to become. It begins not with triumph, but with destruction. The moment you decide to commit to 100 days of discipline, something inside you dies, quietly, almost imperceptibly. The comfort you once worshipped turns against you. Your old self begins to decay. Why bother? This is the first phase, destruction, the tearing down of illusions. Every morning you rise when the body begs to sleep. Every repetition, every meditation, every cold shower becomes a small act of rebellion against your former self. And with each act, the false layers, laziness, fear, identity, begin to crumble. Modern psychology calls this cognitive dissonance. The mind fights change because change threatens survival. But if you persist through this friction, you enter the second phase, discipline. This is the realm of ritual, repetition without resistance. Here, action becomes sacred. Science tells us that habits begin to engrave themselves into the neural pathways after roughly 66 days. The ancient masters didn't have neuroscience, but they had observation. They knew that around the third moon, the body and mind begin to move as one. What was once effort becomes instinct. The sword becomes an extension of the hand.
Meditation becomes the natural state of mind. Hunger becomes clarity. But discipline is not the end. It's only the bridge. Then comes the third phase, dissolution. This is where the self begins to vanish. The ego, once loud and full of demands, grows quiet. You stop asking, how much longer? Or, what's the reward? Instead, there is only the act itself. Breath, step, movement, silence. You are no longer doing the practice. The practice is doing you. In Buddhism, this is the threshold of no self. In Stoicism, it is apatheia, the mastery of emotion through presence. In neuroscience, it is neuroplastic surrender, the moment the brain accepts a new identity as its truth. And from this emptiness, this holy silence, comes rebirth, the fourth and final phase. What emerges after 100 days is not a better version of the old self. It is something entirely new. A consciousness refined through suffering, a will unbent by fear, a body that no longer serves the ego, but the soul. This is the true science of transformation, that every act of structure dissolves chaos, and every act of discipline births freedom. Modern man believes freedom means doing what he wants, but the ancients knew the opposite truth. Freedom begins when you master what you must. The 100-day ritual is not about building habits. It's about burning identity. It is death and resurrection, the alchemy of endurance, where the human becomes divine. Because in the end, discipline is not a cage. It is a key, one that opens the gate between who you were and who you are destined to become. At first, the enemy seems external: fatigue, distraction, the endless noise of life. But soon, you realize the truth. The real battle begins in silence. It starts as a whisper, a small voice that questions the purpose of your path. Why continue? What's the point? You've done enough. This voice is ancient. It wears the mask of logic, but it is fear in disguise. Jung called it the shadow, the unseen self that resists its own evolution. The Buddha called it Mara, the tempter who arrives at the threshold of awakening. And the warrior knew it simply as the weakness within. This is the war within the war, a battle not fought with swords or sweat, but with silence and awareness. Around the 40th day, something begins to shift. The body adapts. The schedule becomes routine, but the mind begins its rebellion. It tells you you're wasting time, that you're not progressing, that this ritual, this sacred 100-day vow, is just self-punishment dressed as purpose. Here, many fall, because they mistake the voice for truth. But those who endure begin to see a terrifying beauty in resistance. They learn that suffering is not punishment, it's purification. Every day of fatigue, every wave of self-doubt, every temptation resisted, is not a test of strength, but of surrender. The monks of Mount Hiei would endure 1,000 days of walking meditation, circling sacred mountains until their legs bled. Spartan youths trained in silence and pain, forbidden to cry out even when beaten. Japanese ascetics practiced misogi, purification through ice-cold rivers before dawn. Each of them knew one thing modern man has forgotten, that resistance is sacred fire. It is not there to break you. It is there to burn away the parts of you that cannot ascend. The ego fights because it senses death. The false identity knows that if you continue, if you truly surrender, it will vanish forever. And this is the paradox of discipline. It feels like domination, but it is actually liberation. Each act of discipline is a small death, the surrender of comfort, the silence of ego, the burial of the self that seeks escape. True strength, then, is not control over the body. It is obedience to the soul. It is walking into the storm willingly, knowing that what survives the storm is no longer you, but something older, purer, indestructible. In this war within, there are no medals, no applause, no end. Only the quiet knowing that each day of resistance is a day closer to freedom. And perhaps that's the final secret of the 100-day ritual, that the man who emerges at the end is not the one who conquered his weakness, but the one who befriended it, faced it, and walked through its fire, unflinching. Because in the end, the purpose of the ritual is not to win, but to surrender to what you truly are beneath the noise, the stillness that no storm can move. There comes a day
when the war goes quiet, not because the battle is won, but because there is no longer anyone left to fight. The body moves without resistance. The mind observes without judgment. The heart beats, steady, unshaken, no longer dragged by the tides of emotion or noise. This is the moment the ancients spoke of, the birth of the iron mind. After 100 days of ritual, of repetition, pain, surrender, something irreversible occurs. You no longer act disciplined. You are discipline. You no longer seek peace. You are peace. The storms that once shook you now pass through you like wind through an empty temple. What once felt like effort becomes nature, because the mind, once fragile and restless, has been reforged, not into steel, but into stillness. Miyamoto Musashi, the undefeated samurai, wrote his Dokudo, the path of aloneness. After a lifetime of battle, he spoke of detachment, of seeing all things as they truly are, without longing or fear. This is the state beyond effort, the moment when one no longer needs control, because nothing within remains uncontrolled. The Stoics called it apatheia, the state where emotion no longer rules reason. The Taoists called it wu wei, effortless action, harmony with the flow of all things. The Zen masters simply called it nothingness, the great silence in which truth reveals itself. It is not numbness. It is clarity so pure that pain and pleasure lose their edges. It is not indifference. It is awareness so vast that everything, joy, loss, triumph, despair, becomes equal in its beauty. The iron mind is not a fortress. It is a mirror, unbreakable not because it resists, but because it reflects. Every challenge, every wound, every fall, it reflects, absorbs, transforms. And as the 100th dawn arrives, something profound occurs. You realize you no longer count days. There is no longer a before or after. There is only presence, sharp, weightless, eternal. The man who began this ritual sought power. The one who finishes it has found peace, because strength, he now understands, was never about control or domination, but about the simplicity of being untouchable by the chaos of life. He who completes the 100 days does not become stronger. He becomes simpler, and in that simplicity lies invincibility. The iron mind is not something you gain. It is what remains when everything else falls away.